Has been doing some reporting there in their hometown and went down to a Red Roof Inn in Hartford that has several families from Puerto Rico. Here's Brian Rivera, who moved into that Red Roof Inn in Hartford back in December with his family of 4.
I got here 2 days ago. It has been really big, hard. We are staying in only one room.
You have reached your destination.
For all of us. The only thing that I just want to do is for my kids have something where they can stay and have a nice place for them. That's all.
Councilwoman Bermudez, you can hear the resignation in Brian's voice there. You can hear his young baby in the background as well. What are conditions like? What have you seen when you visited the Red Roof Inn and other hotels around town?
It's really challenging for the families who are staying in the hotels. These are families who, again, the plane tickets were purchased by FEMA in many cases. They have been staying in these hotels. At any moment, their hotel stay could be removed from them. And so at any moment, they will be displaced again. And so for them, it's been so challenging not knowing if they are going to be able to get that additional extension. And this is really day to day. So day to day, they wake up in the morning. You know, there's one family in particular who they were bringing their kids to school because, you know, a lot of these families have children. And they came back to the hotel and they said, oh, sorry, you now have to leave. And they're saying, what do you mean I have to leave? I just got back from bringing my kids to school. And so they said, oh, no, there's problems. FEMA said that you can't stay here anymore.
Turn left.
Short, we got in contact with Senator Blumenthal's office, and after many phone calls and maybe
turn
several
left,
hours,
then turn right.
That's one case in particular, but there's other families who've been in a state of agony, not knowing what's going to happen next. Now, mind you, they're living in hotels with small children. Some of these children, and Brian's story in particular, never went to and there's no room. There is no access to the kitchen. There is no area for the children to play. They're in a hotel. The lobby area does not suffice for the playground.
Marcella Garcia of Conchester, you've also spoken with families in your state of Massachusetts, which has a large number.
Turn right.
Cool.
Oh. That's it.
Because again, that not having access to a kitchen in a hotel is something that, you know, we don't really think of, you know, being a big deal. But for these families, that means that they have to, you know, find ways to cook their own meals or buy their own meals, which obviously makes it more expensive and more challenging. So I heard from a lot of people that hunger was a very, you know, big concern because they were going days without eating. So for a lot of these families, yes, this benefit is supposed to be temporary, but when you have kids, and like the councilwoman said, many of these families have, you know, small kids, you have to, you know, sign them up for school. And so when you're thinking about leaving or transitioning out of housing, that becomes a large concern. Where are my kids going to go to school? They're in school here. I don't want to disrupt them anymore. So you want to find housing options nearby to minimize that disruption. So the challenges are pretty much the same, and it's pretty dire.
And Marcella, who is helping them with those challenges? I mean, the councilwoman is describing a situation. We're 6 months after the storm now. Many of these families, you're describing them as well. living in conditions, yeah, that would be okay for a week or two in an emergency, eating packaged food or in some cases no food at all. Who is helping them transition to a regular life or figure out what a regular life can be in a completely new place in the mainland?
Community organizations are playing a big role. If it weren't for them, I guarantee you, I don't know what would have been of these families. The state and cities and towns are also intervening, the housing authorities of each city and town. I know that here in Boston, for example, there's a large number of these families already enrolled or signed up in waiting list for public housing because, again, like you can help them transition, but if there's no housing to transition to, it's a puzzle that nobody can really solve. I mean, affordable housing is a challenge here in Massachusetts, period, let alone for just families who are fleeing a hurricane. So what I'm seeing now, what I've been hearing from these community organizations that are on the ground helping these families is that many people just get frustrated and, hit a dead end and say, I'm just leaving. And either they go back to Puerto Rico, or go to another state where they have another friend that they have another family member who can host them for a little while longer. So what you're going to see is, this population of displaced families basically moving from place to place.
After 500 yards, keep left, then take the motorway.
Assistance, because they're going to need it and they're still in need of it.
Councilwoman Bermudez, when your community is helping these families move on from the Red Roof Inn to a more normal life?
Keep left, then take the motorway.
City in Connecticut is very dire in that while I've mentioned the number of families, of the 3 participating hotels and the families that we know of, there's a host of other families, right, that are staying with people they might know from Puerto Rico, that they have family or relatives with who are also Puerto Rican. In Hartford, and specifically, we've received to date 1,820 individuals. And in our school system, we've seen an influx of enrollment of 500 new students in our public school system. Now, the people who've been really mobilizing and helping to engage these families and connect these families with resources, the group that has done the most immediate work has been the volunteers. They've been the fastest moving group. But overall, it's piecemeal. We're piecemealing these services that these families need right now. And so really it's been very challenging in that it's so difficult to try to get all the resources in a one-stop shop, right? And with very little to no support from the federal government, specifically I'm referencing FEMA.
Well, Marcella, let me end with you before we have to run here. Marcella, is anyone talking about a permanent solution here? TSA, FEMA, these agencies have warned of another deadline. Money for these hotels isn't going to be around forever. In Hartford, they're trying hard, but it sounds overwhelming with this piecemeal approach that the councilwoman is describing. What's the end game here?
There is talk already of other permanent solutions or more long-term solutions. There are other programs like FEMA, like the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program, could deploy. And the governor of Puerto Rico has requested FEMA to deploy these other tools that they have. And specifically, I'm talking about a program that's called the Direct Lease Program. And FEMA, what it does is that it pays basically landlords, pays directly rent to landlords up to 8 months for eligible victims. And so this is a program that has already been requested, and FEMA has this program available only in Puerto Rico for Puerto Rican victims on the island. But the governor and other agencies have requested FEMA to make it available to people here in the mainland. All these families, TSA benefit will end eventually for some of them today, actually. For other people, we plan in May 14 to make this direct lease program available here. And again, it will mean 18 months more of housing. And it's true, this hurricane has a long tail, and it's going to be, these families are going to need more than another month or two.
Marcella Garcia, editorial writer with the Boston Globe, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Councilwoman Wilberlys Bermudez of the Hartford City Council, thank you as well. We reached out for a comment to FEMA's Region 1 office serving states across New England, including the Hartford area.
family support or connection, frankly, that others might have?
It is a huge benefit on the same way. Only one of my parents went to high school. I worked my way through college, joined ROTC, and after grad school, managed a team of people at age 23. My advantage over my parents was education and experience at an early age.
A huge discussion going on here on the show and online on our Facebook page and on Twitter as well. We're at The Takeaway. Of course, you can reach us there. This conversation continues next. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Takeaway, WHYY at 12:20. There's more of The Takeaway just ahead. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments today about a California law which requires pregnancy centers to tell clients of available abortion services. Anti-abortion groups say the law violates their free speech. More at 12:30. Then a right to repair bill is before California lawmakers. What is this exactly? Answers ahead in just a bit. WHYY. Doylestown Health proudly supports WHYY. A comprehensive, patient-centered healthcare provider, Doylestown Hospital is nationally recognized as a 5-star hospital for overall quality by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Doylestown Health is focused on providing the right care at the right time, with skilled physicians, home health and hospice care, outpatient services, health centers, and now urgent care. Providers can be found at doylestownhealth.org.
It's The Takeaway. I'm Todd Willick. A new study on race and wealth across America is raising a lot of new questions about how class and racism conspire against black boys and black men. The study was led by researchers at Stanford and Harvard and the Census Bureau, and it looked at 20 million American children and their parents over 16 years. It found that even at the very top of the income scale, black boys who grow up rich are more than twice as likely to wind up poor than
Exit right ahead.
For a long time, scholars have argued that class has played a big role in upbringing in America. And I think after reading the story, it really questions that. And to understand what class may play a role, then it seems to be that race also has some significance here.
That's Malo Andre Hudson, an associate professor at Columbia University and director of the Urban Community and Health Equality Lab, who says the study shows in hard numbers that racism and institutional roadblocks must be inhibiting black men.
I think we have to start looking at what is it about American society that may be impacting black males in a different way. What is the lived experience of black males in America? So we should look at things like negative stereotypes of black males, either being perceived as violent or someone to be feared, or in other cases they might be perceived as being entertainers or athletes. As a professor myself and a black male, I can tell you when I walk around my campus, oftentimes people ask me, am I an athlete? Am I a coach? Or they either fear me. And what that really says to me is that we either are here for entertainment or we're something to be feared, but there's not a lot of discussion or thoughts about us being doctors, architects, artists, scientists, and so forth.
One of the puzzling things that came from this study, Professor, is that the deviation in wealth doesn't seem to bear out for black girls. If black girls grow up rich, with all of the other factors similar to white girls, they tend to be just as likely to stay wealthy as those similar white girls. It's not the case for black boys. What does that say to you?
It again tells me that there's something that is happening in America with black boys and black men. So we need to
After 800 yards, take the exit right.
Overall experience of being incorporated or being integrated into society in a way that is positive and helps with upward mobility. Obviously, this is a complex issue. Needs to be
Take the exit right.
But I would say that there's certainly something going on because you don't see the same income gap, as you mentioned, among black girls and white girls. So I would say as a professor of planning, I think about the built environment and community structures and institutions, and what are the ways that these are serving all members of society, or in some ways might be through structural racism, or bias might be impacting black males.
You know, in a lot of ways, Professor Hudson, this massive study that's gotten so much attention didn't really seem to answer as many questions as it asks. You know, it really seemed to blow the door open to this demand for more research to find out why this very much undeniable disparity for black boys exists in America. So as a researcher yourself, let's talk about that door being blown open for more research. What do you need to know from the data? What do you need to know from the census and other studies to start to bear out how America can begin to solve this problem?
So I would say one of the things that we should start focusing on is the overall educational institution. So what type of education are black men getting? What's their human capital look like? What's their social capital look like? I would also say that this study debunks the cognitive ability argument that says, well, it's really these innate differences in cognitive ability that might be adding to this income gap. And in fact, that if that were the case, you would see a gap among black girls and white girls, and that is not the case. So in some ways, the study's done a great job of helping us look at other factors, and in many ways debunking previous
After 400 yards,
so
keep left.
Forward, it would be important to start looking at the importance of early childhood education, the role of mentoring, even the role of counseling and advising services for black boys. If you're an educator, I would say looking at school systems. In the case of Oakland Unified School District, they have an African American Male Achievement Program that is specifically focusing on the lived experience of young black boys within the school system. And I would say as a society, that's something we may think about is, as we move forward, what policies and programs might we develop that specifically address some of these issues and are targeted towards
after 400 yards,
Professor, we're
keep
two men
left.
talking here, and that's fine, but you might read this study, one might read this study and come away with the conclusion that this type of discrimination doesn't affect black girls, and that when black girls become black women, well, they have it pretty good, because if they grow up rich, they stay rich, and whatever this problem is, it's not affecting them. I take it that conclusion would be erroneous, that discrimination doesn't play a role for them.
Keep left.
Absolutely, and I think when you're talking about the gender dynamics of women in society, and that's for all women, I would say that there's still a lot of work to be done in society, but certainly this study sheds great light because it's a longitudinal study, really looking at
After 400 yards, you have reached your destination. You have reached your destination.